So the recording has started. So once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining another session of Azure Power Lunch. Just keep in mind that this call will be recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop now. So topic of our discussion today is custom Docker containers in Azure App Service. So, starting with that, here is a quick agenda. So, we're going to spend a minute just to level set on app service and containers. And then we're going to talk about how, um, using custom containers in app service allows you to host any stack in Azure App Service. And one thing I definitely want to talk about is adding the SSH support. Um, in custom container, because sometimes it is not, if you're deploying an app, a custom container, that support is not there. And when you're trying to troubleshoot certain things, especially network connectivity, that's where you need that support. And I will show you kind of how simple it is to add that support. And you can just go in at the Azure portal and then SSH into your container. Okay. Um, with that. And then we're gonna briefly touch on, how you can do legacy web apps in Windows containers, which is now GA. And finally, where this whole thing, some of the customers have asked like, okay, should we use AKS? Should we use app service? Where we should use if we have deploying web apps in containers. So we will discuss that. So first of all, um, app service, as you already know, app service is one of the first Azure service, one of the most popular one, allows you to host web apps and headless web apps like APIs, supports enterprise features such as AAD integration, connectivity to virtual network. You can use private link to make these web apps available over private IP, things like that. Supports auto scaling. You can host apps written in .NET Core, Java, Node.js, PHP, all of those in App Service. So kind of a very versatile and battle tested platform um, to host your web apps. Containers. What are containers? Um, by the way, first of all, any questions on App Service? I hope everybody. I mean, wasn't a session on App Service overview. It's just kind of just want to mention it to a level set. So, any questions? Okay. So, containers. Containers are um, basically a way of deployment and packaging. Just want to clarify it that this is uh, this is more to do with deployment packaging than anything else. When in traditional sense, when we used to deploy our app, there used to be a 10-page document that used to go with apps. Okay, these are the dependency that has to be there. Containers make this job easy. You can package a container in a way where all of its dependency, including the app, the OS version, are there. And the way the container, in its kind of true form, it's a virtualization of at the OS level, just like virtual machines or the virtualization happens at the virtualization at the hardware level, where you have a set of hardware and you start spinning up, which we call host. You start spinning up these virtual machines, which looks like and behaves like any kind of a like they are actual hardware, but they are uh, kind of a virtualized on top of the existing hardware. Take CPU and memory out of that hardware and use it. Same way, containers are a manifestation of virtualization at the OS level. And that, since there's no kind of a OS or start, it is or kind of a boot up of a machine. That's why they spin up really, really fast, and they have become really popular. Docker has become a standard for containers, things like that. So, so let's moving forward. What is about app service and Docker containers? So with app service, as I said before, you can bring in your code. You can write your code in languages. There's support for uh, there is um, there is support for Node.js, um, Java, and all those languages there. So you can basically use that to host. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Sorry.
can.
Okay, sorry guys. I thought there was a issue on the voice. Sorry. Let me start back. So, um, but if you have a language or a platform that you don't have support for, how you address that? For example, you have written a website in Go and you want to host it in app service, you want to take advantage of app service past capabilities. That's where Docker containers comes into picture. Host it in Docker container and deploy it into app service. And then you can host your Docker container in Docker Hub, container, Azure Container Registry, or any private registry. So that's, I'm just going to quickly have a short demo to demonstrate that. So let's start with that. So I have this simple Go web app. It has and I'm nowhere near a kind of an expert in Go. I just play around with it a little bit. So this is a small web app. It's basically display this sign. So what we can do is if we can let's run this web app, and the way you do it, run this go run main go, and let's go on to our page and let's refresh it. So that's it shows hello Azure Power Lunch. So this is basically 1 second, allow access, and this is how it shows up, Azure Power Lunch. So it's very simple web page, nothing much to it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna host it into a Docker container. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna build a container and host it in my Azure Container Registry. So I have already Docker extension installed in VS Code. Okay, and by the way, this is my Docker file. Very simple. I'll use the Alpine Golang image, and the rest is pretty boilerplate vanilla Docker code. I mean, you are setting the working directory, you are setting, the usual stuff uh, that you need to run a Go app, exposing the appropriate port, and then just running systems. That's all there is to it. So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna build the image, and this is the image that I'm gonna build. Okay, so let's see what's going on. Okay, I think, oh, I know what is the issue. I think yes, my Docker is running for Windows containers. I forgot to switch it. I have switched it back to Linux. It will take a second. And just keep in mind your Docker desktop. This is a Linux image, so your Docker desktop has to be running with the Linux image, with the, uh, you know. So let me just close this down and start it back up. And folks, I would really appreciate if you are not asking any question, if you can mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, so let me just try it again. Okay, let's go in here on the Docker side, and so these are all the directories. So let me go in here and let's build this image. Yeah, I'm gonna do build image in Azure. That's the one I was waiting for. This is the subscription that I'm gonna use. This is my ACR. So it's now gonna build this image in this particular directory. While it is building an image, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a website. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna create a resource web app, and I am going to use this Visual Studio Enterprise, and I'm going to name it. Oops, wrong one. This is my web app name. I'm going to use Docker Container Linux, and I think I am in South Central. Yep, that's the plan. And now it's going to ask me what is a single container. And by the way, in this session, we are not going to cover Docker Compose. We will probably cover it in a separate session. So this is my Azure Container Registry, and I am going to use this one. And if you see here in the VS Code, this is the image CD13 that it has created. So I'm going to add this tag. That's all there is to it. And I'm going to run this thing, create. So at this point, it's going to spin up and it's going to create that web app. Takes a minute. And while it is creating, just to let you know, as you saw that there is no support for SSH in that image. So yes, it will run as a web app, but if you want to do SSH, like let's say you want to check for connectivity or certain things or do any advanced troubleshooting, that is not there. So we're going to add that support in a second. Give it a second. Let's let this thing complete. Come on. Okay. So yes. So what we can do is if we go to container settings, it will show us what's going on. So just gonna refresh that. It's loading this. And by the way, just keep in mind that this screen does not auto refresh. So what you will have to do is you have to refresh it and to see the latest. It seems like the container is ready to serve our request. So if we go back here, do a browse, and remember, this site is available at hello. So we do that. Perfect. It shows it here. And, you know, it's now that site is available. But if we go in here in the try to access it over SSH and try to go in here to do SSH, of course, it will not work connection closed because there is no SSH setup there. That's why it cannot SSH it to that particular container. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of code into our application, into Docker file of our application. So here it is. And instead of you see me typing all that code, I'm just gonna paste it and then explain it what's going on there. Okay. If you see, this code is absolutely the same. This is only we added just a 2 port numbers. That's all. This is what is interesting, and let me just increase the size a little bit so everybody can see it. In this one, what we are doing is first we are setting up, installing some packages, setting the password for our SSH host. The next thing that we are doing is we are running kind of some of the SSH config. And just keep in mind, there are a few files that you will need, which I have here. One is the SSHD setup. This is the one file. What it does is it set up the host for key generations and everything, and SSHD config. And if you look in the documentation, these files are there, but I'm just want to share those files here, that how these kind of provide you. So what we may want to do is we just want to copy these three directories from here and paste there as well. So let's go in here. And by the way, I have a link to this repo in the document, in the presentation. So if you want to take a look at it as a reference, you can take a look at it. So as you can see here, after all that setup is done, it's going to start the SSHD service and it's going to do the go thing. That's all there is to it. The pretty vanilla and boilerplate stuff. The only thing it is doing is setting up the SSH plumbing. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna rebuild this image. So I'm just gonna do once again the same thing. Pick the same OS, and it's now gonna build this code. So it should be pretty quick since it's already have created the container. Okay.
So does it support deployment slots?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the thing. I mean, you get all the features.
So we will be able to use application settings as well, pass application settings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a given. Yeah, a number of features that I mean, you will get the features of the app service, but with your custom code. Okay. That's okay. So that's deployed. So what we're gonna do now is I haven't turned on this continuous deployment. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna switch and I'm gonna pick the CD14, which is the latest version, and I'm gonna do a save. Okay, so give it a second, let it load. So now it has loaded, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a refresh. Just look at the time. The last time it was at 1714. So let's refresh it. Let's see if it gets the latest image. Okay, it got the latest image. As you can see, the time is 7:19:44. So it has gotten the latest image, all good. And at that point now, we can go in and let's first check our website. So let's do a browse. Okay, yeah, so let's do hello. It is still functional. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go in and we are going to go for SSH. Okay, so, oops, something is not right. Give me 1 second. Let me just and try again. Okay, interesting. I'm not sure why this thing is. I'm pretty sure I think I may have. Oh, you see, I did not save the Docker file, so it still compiled the old Docker file. My bad. Let me just run this thing one more time. Sorry, folks. Demo snafu. So let me just, and by the way, before I run it, I'm gonna change something in the main.go, and I'm gonna say So I'm just going to change something here. Let's try this again. So that's why I did not take any changes. So let me just run this thing again. Hopefully it doesn't take much time. So it's once again, it's doing CD15. In the meantime, any questions? So it's just pushing the image into Docker container. Ideally, you should have a CI/CD pipeline set up, which is pushing your code through Azure DevOps and then using, ACR to build it and deploy it. But this is just a kind of a quick test, so that's why we are kind of relying on just this manual setup. And as you can see, it is going through all of these Docker setups, setting everything to make sure, just like SSH and all those things are set up in Docker. So let it finish. See if, okay, it is now pushing the container. Okay, CD15 is there. So let's go back there and let's go into the container settings and let's try one more time. CD15 is there. So I'm just going to save it. And this is 1123. So let's go in here. Let's refresh this thing one more time to see if it is. Oh yeah, it is. So let's see if it gets that stuff. Not right now. Let's refresh it again. Come on. Oh yeah, it is pulling the container. As you can see, it's pulling different layers. Let's refresh it again. As I said, this is not auto refresh. And come on. Okay. So this is 23, 17, 23. This is right now. It's ready. So let's first of all check our website if that website is working. So if we go in here, type in /hello. Yes, Friday 22, that's working. The next test is let's check the SSH. So if we go in here and click on this, okay. So there is, I'm not sure why this is not working. Let's give it one more try. Okay, just for the sake of sanity, I have another site that is based on the same code while I was, playing with it. Let me show you that site just to kind of, that this is a, let me, yes, that's the one. So this is another site. This is exactly the same site and based on Go, same container. Was playing with it before our session and this works. So as you can see, this we can connect. So I'm pretty sure there is some kind of a maybe something that I may have missed copying from this site, and that's why this is, this is not. Oh, okay. This was the entry point that we missed. I'm sorry. I think that's the difference. So this was the entry point. This is the new entry point that we have to use because it should call this init container. So that's the entry point that I missed. In any way, you get the point. If you look at the GitHub, that has the right code. So this is the entry point that I missed. So sorry for that demo snafu. I want to show a quick example of a Windows container, why you want to host a site in a Windows container. The reason, if website does not, Azure App Web Apps if you are using natively, they do not support system level access like GDI, like fonts. With if you are hosting in a Windows container, that's where you will have that support. So for example, here I have a web app. This is a Windows um, .NET Framework, not Core, .NET Framework Windows app, and it is using a font. So it is basically using a font which is, kind of a system level function, a low level function. And what I'm doing is I'm hosting it in a web app. Normally, if you try to host it, I'm hosting it through a custom container. So what I have done is I have created a custom container here, as you can see, a Windows core container, not Windows Framework Core. It is .NET Framework hosted on Windows Server Core. That's the container I have created and I have deployed in a web app. So here it is. If we go into the web app, this is the WebWin Docker. If I go to browse, so this is using a font. It is basically installing that font on that container and then running that web app. So that's the advantage. Legacy web apps, they don't have support on with App Service native application stack. You can bring in your Windows container. Okay, I have 2 minutes. Just quickly want to talk about AKS versus App Service. A number of times this question has come up. Okay, what we should use, AKS, App Service. Both are great tools, great solution, but just keep in mind, AKS is a great solution, but it has its own complexity. On the other hand, App Service is simple to use, but it has its, uh, you have to realize when you may want to move from App Service versus AKS, and the differentiator is how many services that you have. Are they interacting a lot? Do you need kind of a, do you need to control service to service interaction? If you have probably 10, 15, 20 microservices, probably it's a good idea to use, and they need, and you need to control interaction between services and, something like service mesh. That's where it's maybe a good idea to go with AKS. But if you have 4, 5, 6 services, maybe app service is a good fit for you to use. Because I have seen some of the customer going 2 or 3 apps, APIs, and they're hosting it on AKS. I mean, wonder, as I said, nothing against AKS, great tool, but you have to realize that it brings its own complexity with it. So just keep that in mind. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for joining, folks. I hope everybody had a wonderful Friday, and see everyone next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Have a great day.